All right, so SOHCAHTOA going to help us a lot with trigonometry. But let's do these few questions right over here first to get us started. So here it says, which side is opposite angle C? So if we're sitting there at angle C, which side would be considered opposite that angle? Well, opposite that angle is the one over here, so you could say segment AB is the side that is opposite. Well, let's look at this next question on the way down. Which side is opposite angle A then? Does it change? It's still the word opposite, but the angle has changed. So does the side that is opposite that angle then also change? Yes, it does. It becomes that one over there. So the answer to that one would be BC. And then in this particular problem, which side is the hypotenuse at this point? It is AC. I'll be very honest with you, at the very start of this, I am going to probably stay away from the right angle for now. I'm not going to ask you any of this trigonometry about the right angle. I will ask you about the other angles. Okay? And the ones we're going to talk about today, it does have to deal with a right triangle. So we've done those. Well, there's a funny word over here in this next question. It says, which side is adjacent to angle C? Here's angle C, right? Didn't we just answer that that's opposite? And isn't, so this one I'll just put an O there for opposite. And this one's the hypotenuse, right? So which one's kind of left over to be adjacent? There's only one side left, and that is BC, and so we'll call that adjacent. BC. All right. So now we're asked about adjacent for angle A. Well, here was angle A, right? That one over there is opposite. That one's still hypotenuse. That hasn't changed. So which one is left over to be adjacent to angle A is AB. And here is exactly why we stay away from the right angle. It says which side is adjacent to angle B. The problem is that one's opposite and hypotenuse, so which one is left over? Unfortunately, there's two left over, which is why we stay away from the right angle. Because how would you know which one's adjacent? It could be either one, and that's why we stay away from the right angles. So basically maybe put a no solution to that one. All right? Because we can't really tell. It could be either one. All right? And so that, again, why we are going to stay away from the right angle. All right, so here's the acronym. SOHCAHTOA, that is how it's spelled. You might want to get used to it. Okay, it's either that or memorize the trig ratios, which we're going to get later. I think remembering SOHCAHTOA is a lot easier. All right, some of these words people have come up with, and you know why they came up with them, we'd have to study that to find that out. But I think some of these things, once you see them, you're like, wait, I've seen stuff similar to that somewhere. And that someplace that you've seen it is on the calculator. So S stands for sine. Please notice how it's spelled. It's S-I-N-E, not S-I-G-N. Okay. Sine is what somebody decided to name one of the ratios that you can have. And let's face it, don't we have three sides on a triangle? So I could compare two of them in a lot of different ways, right? And one of the ways we could compare them is we could compare the side that is opposite. Well, that's O stands for opposite. Well, that's pretty clever. So for sine, we're going to do opposite. And what do you suppose the H stands for? Hypotenuse. Right? So those would be the ones we would compare. The side that is opposite and put it over the side that is the hypotenuse. And that'll create a fraction, obviously, if we put it over. Okay. So what do you suppose C stands for? Does anybody know? I know cosine, those of you that maybe have seen this before. That's another ratio. So basically what it is this is kind of one of them. Okay, that's one of the trig ratios we're going to take a look at. Cosine's another one. Well, it's kind of a new word today, at least when dealing with what we've been looking at lately. The A stands for, well, look at the word we looked at today. It's adjacent. So I kind of call that one the one left over after you find opposite and hypotenuse. And I'm guessing you know H by now. Hypotenuse. So look at this as basically another one. So cosine, that's what somebody decided to call it. And that's the ratio of the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. Again, it's a fraction, adjacent over hypotenuse. It will create a fraction. Yeah, tangent is the T. That is the third one, tangent. And by now, I hope you know what O and A are going to stand for. They don't change throughout the thing. O is opposite. Well, that's weird. O is opposite. And A is, once again, adjacent. So you could consider that, perhaps, the third trig ratio that we're going to take a look at. There are actually 6 of them total. We're only going to take a look at 3. You want the other 3, take advanced math. So sine, cosine, tangent, that's all we have to worry about. You're going to, I think, going to start to like this acronym once I show you how to use it. But the first thing is, let's face it, you got to figure out what the letters stand for. You got to figure out the words first. And so now you can see why it is very important to spell it correctly. Okay, SOHCAHTOA. All right. Any questions so far? Well, let's try one, and then I'll let you off on your own here. Let's just deal with all the ones that say A right here. And here are your abbreviations. Sine is actually S-I-N. Cosine is C-O-S. Tangent is T-A-N. And you probably want that sheet. So, SOHCAHTOA is what we just had. And so what some people do is they just write it on this page so that they can see it. And let's face it, the more you write it, the more you're going to know it, because your brain's going to start to remember it. So I'll write it over here. Well, where should I put it? I'll write it over here. Now, don't think you always have to write it up and down. That just happens to be where I have room for it. You can write it across if you want to write SOHCAHTOA that way. And here's how you use it. Let's just do these 3 together, and then I'll set you off on those other 3 on your own. Now, what it's saying is sine is actually, it's doing something to that angle A. It's something your calculator will do for you eventually. So let's just find angle A right here. Right? That's angle A. So of the numbers up here, which one would you consider to be the hypotenuse in this triangle that you have? 5 is the hypotenuse, so why don't we just put a little h next to that for right now and probably write it lightly because you might want to change it for later. And based on angle A, which side is opposite, the 3 or the 4? The 4, right? And then that leaves 3 to be adjacent. So now what you can do, now that you've kind of labeled it, it really ends up pretty simple. Sine of angle A. So here's angle A. Sine, if you look at SOHCAHTOA, O comes first, which means opposite over hypotenuse. So which one's opposite? It's 4. And you put it over as in a fraction form, whatever the hypotenuse happens to be, which is 5. That's all I'm asking you to do for right now. We're going to get more into it a little bit later, but for right now, that's all I need you to do. So is cosine of A going to be the exact same answer? Is that also going to be 4/5? Well, let's find out. Cosine over here is the CAH portion, and that says A for adjacent and H for hypotenuse, correct? And so if I'm doing, again, angle A, adjacent is 3, and it says over hypotenuse, which is 5. So you notice they do come out slightly different. And how about tangent? Well, tangent is the TOA portion, and we're going to use opposite and adjacent. And so that fraction, again, we're dealing with angle A, so opposite is 4, and adjacent is 3. And for right now, if you've got that pretty well figured out, you're off to a really good start. It gets a little more complicated than that, but that's a really good start. So I'll get you started on angle C and then let you finish. Are there any questions on angle A? Okay, so here now let's go to angle C. So we're right here. Is 5 still the hypotenuse? Yeah. Is 4 still opposite? No, what's 4 now? Adjacent, yeah. And somebody was showing me which one was opposite, and that's 3. Very good. So why don't you go ahead and do C right now.